What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this Saturday night. It is August 27, 2022, about 8:11 p.m. California time. Latest quake shows a 4.1 earthquake in the area south of Japan. We're starting to see a pretty good swarm of earthquake activity here within the last couple hours along the northern end of the Philippine plate here. This is the Izu Trench, showing quite a bit of earthquake activity. Looks like a 5 in there as well. All right, let's go ahead and check out earthquake activity across the map here on the USGS scale. We'll get to Yellowstone here in just a little bit. Let me flip this over so we can see. Latest activity here around the western portion of the Pacific plate here. Shows some activity really ramping up within the last couple hours, including a 5.3 and the most recent one, a 4.4 in the Izu Trench. Now, these are pretty shallow earthquakes here. It is in an area that has seen some earthquake activity. I believe it's been over a month or so ago. There was actually a little swarm taking place here in this region. Let me see if we can bring some of it up. And it's within that swarming area, the current earthquake activity that is in the older movement, where we've seen all this activity. As noted here, within the last 4 weeks, it is showing some of the activity. And I believe, not for sure what the largest sequence is here. See what we got in that cluster. It looks like a 5.7. So I can't really say we've seen a main quake here because we've had a bunch of 5s in that mix. And we got another 5 today and a bunch of other 4s into this area as well. So this might be something to watch. It is pretty shallow, and it could be a good sign of a lot of pressure building up here in this region. This area does see some large earthquake activity. If I remember right, we kind of took a look at the past historical data here, as far as 7.0 and above goes. And this swarming activity is striking in a region where we haven't really seen any large-scale activity since records have been kept. We did see some, of course, up north around the Japan Trench and south of here, a little bit further south. So this specific area, though, has not seen a very large earthquake. So it's kind of filling in the gaps, right? Sometimes that could be pointing to something much bigger about ready to happen. So watch that area pretty closely. Further up north on the Kurokamachaka Trench, this area is starting to fill in a little bit as well. This area hasn't seen a large quake in quite some time either. Of course, the Japan earthquake struck down here back in 2011, that mega quake, the 9-pointer. But up here in the Kurokamachaka Trench, it is a high area for it's a major slip rate in a short amount of time. And we just haven't seen any large quakes here. And I'm sure it's building up. It's just a matter of time to watch. So watch this area pretty closely. Right now we're kind of seeing a couple 4s. Looks like the largest so far, a 4.7. And this is an overall sign of some seismic unrest here along the Pacific plate. And it's been awfully quiet in terms of earthquake movement here recently over the past couple days. Now starting to fill in today. A little spotty activity over here around the Philippines, north of Manila. But this 5.2 that struck is from earlier this morning time frame, and it is within that zone that's seen that upper 6-pointer well over 30 days now, I believe, within that region. So aftershock sequence activity continuing there, but new movement up here to the north. And like I say, we really can't say if we've had a main quake here in this swarming activity in the Izu Trench, so watch it closely. Alaska showing some activity, but not a whole lot. Still seeing some movement out here around the volcano. Last 24 hours of all magnitudes still shows some movement here in the Trident volcano area of Alaska. Now, we looked at the kind of the tally here over the last week in this region, and it's a pretty good number. We've got about 109 earthquakes specifically around this volcano. We have not seen any notification, so to speak, from any of the sources. Let's double check it here. It is a weekend. It is not erupting, but any type of major swarming like that around a volcano is something to note, right? We don't want to see swarms of earthquakes around volcanoes. That's normally a sign of unrest. So current conditions here on the Trident volcano is green and normal. When we go to the site, it shows a little bit of information on this volcano here. The last eruption was back in 1953. So a little bit of activity been building up, obviously. And looks like there was a fragmental cone that was built back in 1953 due to the uplift and whatnot. So we'll watch this pretty closely. All I know is we're still having some swarming activities around that volcano in the Alaska area. All right, West Coast. Not a whole lot going on through the Pacific Northwest. Most of the activity today has been well down south and also well inland around the Yellowstone National Park area. We did have a 3-pointer come in a little bit earlier this afternoon, actually right after the update, in the San Jose area. This earthquake was felt pretty broadly on the Calaveras Fault Zone, a 3.0 at 8 kilometers deep. Not a super deep earthquake. Looking at the specifics here of this earthquake, excuse me. I was eating some pumpkin seeds, and as much as I love them, sometimes they get stuck in my throat. San Jose, Fremont, Hayward, Berkeley, Concord. It looks like even maybe someone felt it over around the Modesto area. So even if it's just a 3-pointer, but still a lot of folks felt it. It is a highly populated region. That is the Bay Area, southern portion of the Bay. Not my environment whatsoever, but it did strike on the, kind of looks like it was on the Calaveras Fault Zone here, and that does extend up north. And it is a pretty dangerous fault system. That and the Hayward Fault, these, I kind of think these are overdue for at least a 6 within the region of the Bay Area. But things have been very quiet here recently. As far as aftershock activity goes, we haven't really seen any following that 3-pointer. It looks like there was at least one foreshock. Looks like maybe a couple minutes or so prior to the 3.0. So, we might want to watch that pretty closely. Also here in the, what do we got here? The Antelope Valley area. This is not down south. This is on the eastern crest of the Sierra Nevada near the Nevada border. Not a whole lot of population, but it is called the Antelope Valley near Colville. A 1.0 just coming in within the last hour. Mostly spotty activity throughout the rest of the Sierra Nevada and down south. Some activity looks like around the Santa Clarita area. We've got a 1.4 and a couple other smaller quakes along the San Jacinto Fault Zone. Now Yellowstone, I believe the USGS only has 2.5 and above set for the earthquake notification system, because when we go and check out the Yellowstone overviews, let's go ahead and check it out. This is day number 3 of the earthquake swarming. We can see there pretty strongly on the graphs that there's quite a few earthquakes popping off here at Yellowstone National Park. I believe these 2 here are the upper 2s that were reported, but anything under that, it looks like the USGS is not reporting them, as they are not showing up here even on the all magnitudes map. So looking at here at the recent graph within this region, there's a lot, but the majority of these, as mentioned, is under 2.5, and they're still continuing up into this hour. Again, this is day number 3, kind of venturing into day number 4 of continual earthquake activity there at Yellowstone National Park. So we'll continue to watch that as well. Rest of the country, a little spotty activity, it looks like, in Oklahoma. This one out in the New Madrid zone was from earlier this morning. Not a whole lot popping off there right now. Hawaii lighting up here within the last hour, including a 3.2 in the Pahala area. A little spotty activity, though. Only about 12 earthquakes to report there on the map. But things could get the ball rolling. I think things could get rolling again with this westward pressure movement that we're starting to see really build up here along this northwestern corner of the Pacific Ring of Fire, the Pacific Plate. So we'll watch that pretty closely. Not a whole lot South America. We got one earthquake down here, it looks like, a 4.4. That one from earlier this afternoon time frame. And one off the coast of Panama, 4.2. Not a whole lot going on in the Puerto Rico Trench over here. We got a little spotty activity with a swarming And one earthquake here in the Virgin Islands. That one was from late last night. Nothing really going on across the Fiji Islands area, American Samoa or Tonga. Things very, very quiet here, but like I say, we could be starting to see we're starting to see the ball set in motion, or the plate set in motion, so to speak, in terms of the uptick that we are normally used to here within this area. And of course, the Pacific plate does move a lot to the northwest here. Puts a lot of pressure up against this plate, the subduction zone, and we've got to watch that. Got to watch that pretty closely. All right, let's see what else we got here. Solar weather activity. Actually, before we get into that, let's go ahead and check out the tremor map tonight along the Cascadia. And we got about, looks like 215 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia, and it covers a good portion of the subduction zone itself, all the way from the Vancouver Island ranges down south into Northern California, where the southern end of the Cascadia sits. So pretty broad area being covered today. What does that mean? Well, I think it means that we're still looking at quite a bit of pressure increasing here, kind of shoving that plate down underneath the North American plate. And we'll see with the activity out west on the Western Pacific here, if this kind of lulls the activity inland, including the Yellowstone area. And I think I can say this, that when we see things pretty quiet here along the Western Pacific, and not a whole lot of activity along the West Coast, that pressure activity really builds here up against the North American craton that kind of sits here within the center of the states and up north, and it kind of squeezes the land, or it squeezes the plates, and we get that swarming activity in certain areas, and in this case happened to be Yellowstone National Park. But we'll watch, see how it affects the Yellowstone swarm with all this activity that's been occurring here over the last couple hours. All right, space weather activity is another one. Man, we are getting pretty busy in the space weather department. Look at that stuff right there. Okay, so these are the Proton events happening right now at the northern latitudes and the southern latitudes. These are some pretty high frequency radio blackouts being produced by the Protons right now, and they are at 99% certainty. And there's a little good article here put out, let's see what I did with it, on the basically what happens when a solar flare is produced, and also when when protons are directed at Earth, how it affects the HF radio communication at higher latitudes. And I would suggest you guys read this if you want to know more about it. The Space Weather Prediction Center has a pretty good article on it. But that's kind of what we're seeing right now, with the protons really, really racking up here at 99%. And we'll see this on the map, on the DRAP map, a lot when we get hammered with protons. And that's taking place. Most of the time, solar flare activity will hit an area on the daylight side of the Earth, which now is, you got the Western Pacific. Kind of odd, right? We're seeing all that earthquake activity kind of strike up there right now. But protons all the way up north, it looks like it's starting to spill in into the Canada region as well. We've just been kind of hammered with flares recently, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. So far I've counted, I don't know if there's a tally far as the flares go. I'm pretty certain that there is. I'm not for sure exactly where it's at. Gosh darn it. I was going to bring it up here, but we probably had at least 10 M flares over the last 48 hours. Now, I've got to remember, some of these M flares have been shadowed from a larger flare, so to speak. So every one of these spikes here, indicative on the map, is another flare being produced. And there was basically four flares there in this little cluster. And of course, we had another long duration M flare, followed up by another little one peeking into the M. And you can pretty much count them right there. So things are very active on the sun, and the majority of this activity is coming from this guy right here. 3088, I believe, is his name. her name, or its name, however you want to pronounce it right there. It is kind of facing away from Earth, but it's the results, the effects are still being felt here at the higher latitudes there from the protons and the solar flares that are kicking off here. This one was, let's see, is this updated recently? 03. Yes, that is the most recent imagery, and it still looks like it's kind of producing a flare right now. All right, so let's look at some of the specifics. These guys only showing 5 M flares here, and those are, I don't know, maybe they'll get to them. But there's those ones that are basically in the shadow of these larger ones that they haven't accounted for yet. So these guys have 3089 in the red category here. And 3089 is not the one that is sparking off all the activity right now. 3089 is kind of way over here. The bad boy is 3088, now stretching kind of across the southwestern side of the sun, southwestern limb, but it's still producing flares, so it is going to be geo-effective as far as the radio blackouts and whatnot go. 3089 is this one. We're starting to get a lot of intermixing here of the blues, the greens, the yellow, and the orange, showing a complex magnetic field, and I believe we're at a see what we're at as far as the class goes. We are still at a beta gamma class field. Looks like 60% chance of a C flare, M flare at 15, and an X flare at 5%. This one did produce a M7.2 yesterday, and also an M5.3. So it does have the potential to spark off some activity. Although I think right now the 3088 is the one that's kind of just producing a lot. Even though these guys are only showing an M4.8, it has done way more than that in the past 24 hours. It does kind of looks like it's got a beta class. It might be a little bit more complex here. We're looking at a lot of intermixing, and you know, it might give us another M flare before it completely disappears on the southwestern limb. There is a couple other sunspots that are facing us. 3086, which is the one that kind of sits in that coronal hole, kind of neat looking, but it really hasn't done anything spectacular. So it's just kind of sitting there, but it does pose a threat for some flares. But I think right now, you know, with these ones, 3089, which is now kind of, as I mentioned, going to be rotating into view. It's got that beta delta, or which class was that? Hold on a second here. Beta gamma class. So that one harbors like pretty much the most energy currently to produce a significant flare, and of course that's going to be rotating into view. Here, actually, kind of is right now, but we'll be lined up a little bit more here in the next day or so, it looks like. So activity really ramping up here, folks. Overall, we got a risk of course, 99% chance of a C flare. We're already up there. We're crackling with M flares left and right. X flare has been elevated up to a 25% potential. We just haven't seen it yet, and I think we will here pretty soon. 99% proton probabilities, and you can see that 100% right now at the higher latitudes there with the HF radio blackouts from the Proton event that is ongoing. Let's see here. These guys just kind of showing the probability details here. And as we noted, 3089, 3088, the most likely culprits there to produce the X flare potential. We are getting maybe a glancing blow from a CME, possibly on the 28th and 29th, sparking up a G1 class storm on both nights, or both days, I should say. And we'll see if that comes to play, though. But man, is it busy. It's just, it's definitely sparking like crazy. It might be getting ready to produce an X flare. And it's just odd. We're seeing all this activity. Look at this up here around Japan as well right now. Of course, all that Proton event hitting us. And also the flare activity on the daylit side of the sun, or of the Earth. Excuse me. Oh, it's been a long day. All the activity just kind of happening right there. And another earthquake popping up here since we started the update of 4.4 into the Japan Trench at 62 kilometers. So this whole section right here, folks, boom, 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 all the way up here, we definitely got to watch it. Looks like things are really starting to pick up, or really wanting to pick up here in this area. So be on guard. And I think with all this activity and possibly any future larger scale activity, that should give a little bit of activity and relief, or give some relief out here with the swarming that we're seeing inland up against the North American craton, and any other further west coast pressure activity that we're seeing right now. I'm kind of curious though, see how this volcano up here, the Trident volcano, is affected by the further movement here to the west with the Pacific plate. But just be on guard, folks. That's a lot of activity ramping up here within the short amount of time around the Japan area. Let's see if we got any new notifications here on the volcanoes, which we don't. Everything looks pretty green across the board here along the west coast. Typical activity across the volcanoes there in the Aleutian Trench. Kilauea still doing its thing. Tau volcano is still at yellow, and they have lowered the other volcano down here in the American Samoa to green. That is going to be, peek in here a little bit, that's going to be the, let's see if I can zoom in, not for sure what's going on there. Afu Alsega, that's right. I think Missy Mimi's pronounced that correctly last night. We didn't get too many complaints. So Afu Alsega, they have lowered that to the green category because of the installment of the seismic stations across the region, and they've confirmed that the ongoing earthquake swarm, which we'll check out here, is right around the Tau volcano. So it has nothing to do with the volcano up here to the northwest. There was a little uncertainty on that, on which one is producing all the noise underneath the ground, but they've confirmed that it's right around the Tau Island, Tau volcano and the Manua Islands. Looking at the latest data, let's go ahead and check out the seismic data here from the raspberryshake.org website. Shows the last 24 hours of earthquake activity on their scale, and yeah, they're still definitely getting some earthquake swarming going on there at the Tau volcano. I don't see any major changes, any type of harmonic tremor. All these little earthquakes here are indeed earthquakes. And some of these larger ones are, probably up there around the upper 2 range, and all these other medium-sized ones under that for sure. But still a good handful of quakes looks like every hour. They're getting quite a few. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what it's going to do, if anything's going to happen or not. Just one of those things. So all right, guys, have a good night. Stay safe out there. Saturday night out there, and a lot of crazy stuff going on. But we will chat you guys a little bit later. And, of course, anything changes, we will be hopping on here for an update. But watch the Western Pacific, folks. We'll chat you guys a little bit later. Stay safe.